Hi, you're listening to Building Blank.
A collaborative world building podcast.
We're your hosts, Travis,
And Greg.
and today we're diving into the world of creation myths.
Nice.
All right, and welcome.
Welcome.
So, Greg, today we're talking about the beginning, and it's beginning to look a lot like spring out there.
Ooh.
A little bit.
Yeah, we're out of that polar vortex.
Yeah, so it's actually decently out there. I mean, it's still cold, but better than it was. Anyway, so we're talking about creation myths. We're talking about the dawn era, the beginning of time, time immemorial. So when we talk in eras, you talked about, the different ages, and then there's always like a before time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is what we're talking about today. And I did a bunch of research, or not really research, but going through some creation myths.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I picked out, it could be anything. So feel free to be as creative as you want with your creation myths.
Mm-hmm.
They can be as crazy or wild or mundane as you want them to be. But I picked out a couple common threads, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, just to get a good start.
Yeah. So I've picked out a couple myths that I want to talk about. I'm not going to talk about Lord of the Rings because we've been talking about Lord of the Rings a lot, which, is not that bad, but, it's not a Lord of the Rings podcast. So
yeah.
It's just a really good example of like hard world building, but I'm going to skip it today. And we're going to talk about a few threads that I found are common in a lot of myths.
Okay, cool. So what do we got?
So right now, the myths that I looked through and I grabbed, I have a couple examples here. They usually contain gods of some sort. There's usually some sort of conflict involved, which is either before or after the making of the world or the cosmology. I'm going to be using world to interchangeably, like the whole universe. I'm going to use the term world.
Okay.
And usually there's like powerful magic that's not been seen since, or, there might be relics that are uncovered, make real good MacGuffins.
Yeah, it's just like the amount of power and time that's taking place is just on a galactic scale kind of.
Yeah. So we're not going to be talking about the science of how worlds actually form. We're going to be talking about like the fantastical origins and myths and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I have 4 examples today that we're going to go through. I have the Dawn War from D&D. Specifically, I think it's 4th edition, which I really like their the mythology there. We're going to talk about Norse and Greek mythology for real world examples. And we're also going to talk about one of my favorite games, Assassin's Creed. Has a neat, it's a little different.
Yeah, you're telling me a bit about it, and it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so gods. There usually is some kind of gods or primordial beings, some kind of precursor to whatever the races are today. They're not necessarily the same ones that create the world as the ones that are worshipped.
Yeah, so almost kind of like we have our eras, and then there's the dawn era. There's like the dawn gods.
Yeah, and that dawn era can take millions, billions of years or not. Who knows, right? We can't measure that time. It's before time is measured usually. So I'm going to go through for my example. So we have Odin and his brothers, Vili and V, and the giant Ymir. So these are like the actors in this story of the myth, right? We have, for the Dawn War, we have the primordials. Oh no, this is not the Dawn War. This is Greek. Sorry, primordials, or the old gods. You have Gaia, the earth, Uranus, the sky, and then later on you have Zeus and the gang. Right. For the Dawn War, you have the gods of the astral sea, which are the powers of law, and the primordials of the elemental chaos, which are the powers of chaos. It follows the D&D alignment chart.
Okay.
And then for Assassin's Creed, it's a little different. You have the Isu, which are like a precursor race to humans.
Cool. Let's dive in.
All right. So there's always like these actors. You have characters. It's a myth. There's going to be people,
okay,
right? And they're usually the gods. Conflict. So usually the actors don't get along in some faction. So for example, Odin and crew, they slay Ymir. I don't know if I'm saying that properly, That's how I'm going to say it. Then Dirty Zeus and the boys imprison Kronos and the other primordials in Tartarus. Right? There's some kind of conflict. They fight. In the Dawn War, as it, you can kind of guess, it's a war. The gods wanted to turn the chaos into the world, and the primordials, led by the mad god Tharizdun, rebelled. War raged for eons. Gods and primordials died on both sides until eventually the gods came out on top.
Okay, and that's for D&D.
That's for, specifically 4th edition. I think you can use it if you want. But yeah, it's a D&D pantheon. There's too many gods to name. Way too many to name. Sorry. Ooh, okay. And then in Assassin's Creed, humans, led by hybrid humans, Adam and Eve, rebelled and overthrew the Isu. Civilization was basically wiped out overnight. There's like a cataclysm, and they basically get forgotten about.
Yeah. No, I really like that last one.
Yeah, it's a cool concept. It's not specifically about like the Earth. Anyway, I'll get to it.
Yeah.
The making of the world. So this takes place either before, during, or after the conflict. Can refer to either the actual making of the world or the creation of the race. I feel like I'm going really fast. Good? Okay, cool. Creation of the races that are known today. So, for example, Odin, Vili, and V, they create the world tree out of Ymir's body. This is after the conflict.
That's what happens. Okay.
Yeah. And then you were helping me with this. Gaia, Uranus, Tartarus, Nyx, Eros, and Erebus.
Yeah.
They kind of just appear out of nothingness.
Yeah, something like that. I'm a little hazy on my Greek mythology.
That's the broad strokes, the gist of it.
Mm-hmm.
They appear, and then the primordials come, and then the war happens. So it's before the conflict. So in the D&D, the Dawn War, the gods, after the war, pull apart the element of chaos, creating the separate elemental planes, and then they take pieces to create the material plane.
Okay, that's cool.
Which is why the material plane is always like in between all the 4 elemental planes. So that happens obviously after the conflict. And then in Assassin's Creed, the Isu were the first civilization on Earth. They're a super advanced technological race, and they created humans as a slave race in their image. All modern gods were prominent Isu, both unbeknownst to humans. So like when we discover things about the Isu in the games, it's always like Odin or Juno or Zeus. They're people who were like they lived at some point, and they were part of this master technology race. And then they're all gone, and basically humans were primitive humans, and they lost all knowledge of it, and that's what became basis of like the modern religions and stuff.
And then we're just trying to piece it together afterwards.
Like now, current, basically. The thing about Assassin's Creed is it kind of markets itself as a historical fiction, but it's definitely a historical fantasy.
Yeah.
Like it's set in our world, but it's definitely a fantasy.
That's cool. I really like that. I never really got into the Assassin's Creed, but I didn't really know that they had so much history and this cool stuff about that. Because that's this kind of stuff I just love.
A lot of it doesn't come up until much later in the games. Like in the first game, there's like a specific artifact that's like a precursor artifact that you end up getting at the end or trying to find. And that's like all there is to know. Like the real information about the Isu doesn't really come until much later.
Like in the first game or like in the later games?
In the later games.
Oh, okay.
Like we don't get a name Isu until I think Odyssey.
I think speaking of that, I think a lot of fiction, they probably write their creation myths afterwards,
Yeah.
Like they have all this, and then because I mean that's a good way to do like a prequel or something too.
Yeah. Like I think in the first game it's just like there is like pre-civilized first civilization technology, and that's the point of the game is like you're going into the genetic memories of these people who like found them in the past because the current people are trying to find them now, right?
Okay.
But anyway, moving on. That brings us to my next point: magic that is near unattainable to mortals. So the powers that the gods wielded is not present in the world.
Right.
Whether there's magic in the world or not, definitely the Dawn era had like the most magic, whether
Yeah.
that be through technology or whatever. So in both like Nordic and Greek, magic is like very subtle. If like what people actually are doing is magic at all, right?
Yeah.
You know, mostly getting high and seeing visions. That's basically the extent of what magic is in the real world.
Like the big one that stands out for me in Greek mythology are the three weapons that Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus get.
Yeah.
And those were made by the Cyclops.
Yeah.
And it was like Hades' helm of invisibility. It's like, that's pretty magical or technological. Mm?
Yeah.
And then Zeus is like Thunderbolt, obviously, and
In the
Poseidon's
trident.
Trident.
Yeah. But like humans don't actually have access to these things.
Yeah.
Right? They're mythological artifacts, or people are hunting for them. Yeah. But then so I'm just lumping those two together. I'm really like burpy today, probably because we had lunch right before we started recording.
Yeah.
Which probably wasn't a good idea, but whatever, we're here. So the gods retreat from the mortal plane and they place limits on the magic, which is why you have a 9th level spell cap. Before that, like gods can do 10th, 12th, 14th level spells.
So is that something in D&D?
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
So like the reason there's a level cap on spells is because the gods placed a level cap on spells.
That's cool.
Right. But yet you find some extremely powerful artifacts or weapons left over from this time period. And then the Isu magic, quote unquote, is just technology. They're so far advanced even from modern humans that their technology seems magical to us even now. Most of it was destroyed, but some artifacts remain. They call them current people call them pieces of Eden. And that's basically what the whole premise of the game is like a fight between these two factions to find these pieces of Eden.
I think that's one of my favorite tropes, like magic actually just being old technology.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really neat. And that's the real difference with Assassin's Creed, because like it's based on like the idea is there is no actual gods or creation myth. It's science. Like the world was created as we would know. Evolution created these people and then they created us.
Okay.
Right? So the real like evolved species on Earth would be the Isu. And then they created us in their image. And then they became our gods.
So we're like Skynet.
Basically.
We became self-aware.
Pretty much. We're Skynet. That makes sense. So what do we do with that? My world, I'm going to talk a little bit about the world that I made for our D&D game, and a little bit about my creation myth here. So my world is called Korra, and it kind of has some similarities to the Dawn War or like the Norse mythos. So in the beginning there was nothing but just like chaos. There's like these primordial beings of chaos. They roamed around, and there was an egg that was like basically just an egg of light. One day, after millions of years, this egg hatches into the dragon made of light, pure light, named Kor. And the primordials basically go at him immediately because he's like not chaos. He's like order and goodness and light. And they have a war. Primordials actually kill Kor, but from his body 2 other dragons emerge. Like he splits into 2 basically. Well, his dead body is still there, but anyway, 2 dragons emerge. And they know from the mistakes of Kor that they can't take the primordials alone, so they go off and they have their own children. Each of them has 5, who then become the greater gods. And then the children of those dragons become the lesser gods. And this is how I explain like the different colors, because I'm using the D&D base, right, with the different colors of dragons.
Right.
And then all the lesser and greater gods are these dragons. And then eventually their children then become dragons, what we know today, mortal dragons. But all the gods that are in the world are these other dragons. So they go to war with the primordials and end up killing them all.
Just full stop.
Just there's a war. Some of them die on each side. They full stop, get rid of the primordials. They're these dragon gods and primordial bodies, the body of Kor. They pull everything together and build the world out of the bodies.
Okay.
So kind of taking from that Norse Ymir, building the world out of the body. between core and the primordials, which then is called Korra, right?
Nice.
And then each individual greater god, kind of like creates their own races and stuff, and that's how that ends up populating the world. So I don't want to go into super detail because I could be talking all day about that.
Yeah,
But
I really like that. I really like family trees and stuff, and I think that's probably why I get so drawn to Greek mythology, because
Yeah.
it's just the family tree's a mess. But that's another one of my favorites for creation myths.
Yeah.
Like the descendants, or even a succession myth sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
So some races are favored by different like greater gods. So like the greater god that represents like the silver dragons is like the basically created elves, right? The one of the bronze, I think, bronze and brass, I always flip around in my head, but created the dwarves and so on and so forth.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I kind of like, I wanted to talk about mine in this episode, but at the same time, like I haven't quite got it figured out. Like, but when you were telling me about the Isu and the Assassin's Creed, I was so upset or disappointed, kind of, because that's really kind of similar to mine. Like the
Yeah.
technology as an old or ancient technology, seemingly magical, and how there wasn't actually like. And now I'm going to talk about Lord of the Rings. No,
Yeah.
but like how they created the earth and sung it and stuff. I was going to do more like, yeah, like everything happened the same, like, or like the way we think it happened, right? With like the Big Bang and everything, and then evolution, and then it's just that first civilization,
Yeah. And then anything that comes after is, yeah, okay.
and then like misinterpreted them as gods.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about like creative works is we've been telling the same like 20 something stories since the Greek times. So I don't ever think in your head, like as long as you're not intentionally ripping something off.
Yeah, doing like this one's just Zeus and that one's just Poseidon and that one's Hades.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, well, actually,
you could do that too.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that either.
I mean, as long as like you're not ripping off another creator specific, like to the T.
Yeah.
Like you can be inspired by things. That's why we do the weekly inspiration, right? Like things inspire us. We get ideas, and ideas are recycled and changed. And so don't be afraid to do stuff like that. And you know what? You might have an idea and then find out, oh, it's been done.
Yeah,
slightly differently.
Well,
but that's okay.
That's the likely thing to happen, right? Because
nothing's
really original.
Nothing is original. So yeah, just don't be afraid to like make it what you want. And these are more the common threads that I found in a lot of creation myths. And again, like Lord of the Rings, I'm going to bring it up. We have to bring it up. Like the gods sang the world into existence.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of ridiculous, but it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. And then it also kind of like explains, well, you were talking about Tom Bombadil and his singing magic, right? Like why he's so powerful.
Yeah. I have theories about Tom Bombadil, but it's probably not the best place to talk about them.
Conspiracy theories.
A little bit. A little bit.
Okay. So then after the break, we're gonna start building this, right?
Yeah. So what we're gonna do after the break, we're going to start on our creation myth. We want your input, and we'll talk about that after and how we're gonna roll that up together. But we're gonna get started on it. I think with that, we'll go make ourselves a cup of tea, and yeah, see you after the break, guys. All right, and welcome to the break. So this is the part of the show where we don't talk about world building or creation myths and all that. We talk about how much we are thankful for you guys listening at home.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. If you guys know anybody who would enjoy the show or get any use out of it, just share it. Let them know. We'd love to get more people inputting, sending us creative ideas. Speaking of creative ideas being sent, we have another user submission, or not user submission, listener submission for shopkeepers. So our friend Brad sent us a submission. Bradford Jr. Remember old Bradford in the Clearwater Crossing?
Oh, right. And then he had that wife.
So Bradford Jr., the son of Bradford, moved from Clearwater Crossing to Delta to open a burger cart.
Yeah, and he's got a fine mustache.
A fine mustache.
Yeah, that was pretty much the extent of it.
Yeah, that's what he said. So thank you, Brad. Thank you for listening. And yeah, if anyone ever has more submissions to give us at any time, send them on to us. You can hit us up on our Facebook, Building Blank Collaborative World Building Podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Building Blank Podcast, or you can always send us an email, buildingblankpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. I think with that, we are going to get back to it. All right, and welcome back.
All right, so what are we going to build?
Well, today I had an idea, and we're talking about the beginning of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know we didn't talk about this, but I have this idea, and bear with me here.
Okay, I'll be a bear.
So how about in the beginning, there's these two gods, right? They're just, these two gods. They're bros,
okay,
and they're like, maybe there's like some kind of plague going around in Godland.
Okay,
and they're like, you know what we should do? We should create a world together.
Oh, okay.
Right? So these two guys, they go and they're like, hey, let's build this world and let's tell people about it. Let's get all our other god friends to like help us out and let's create this world together.
Okay. I like it.
I love the look on your face right now.
Well, I was like, I don't want to say taking you seriously, but I thought you were like coming up with but I see what you did there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get it, but I just think it would be a neat idea.
Oh, that has no relevance to real
anything.
life at all.
Yeah, no. What are you talking about? This is fiction, Greg.
Yeah, I love fiction.
This is fiction. Yeah, so these two guys are like, hey, let's make this world. Let's tell our friends about it.
So are they like primordials or what?
Yeah, they're like, once a week we're gonna get together. once a primordial week, we'll get together and we'll talk about things.
Because time doesn't exist.
Or time doesn't exist,
it's too long, right?
Yeah. So, and we'll let people know. We'll tell a bunch of people, bunch of other gods about this world and get their input and yeah, we'll do that every week from now until the end of time.
Until the apocalypse.
Yeah, until the apocalypse. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
This is actually now just the first episode of Building Blank.
Yeah, this is in the beginning. We're restarting. We're gonna do everything again, all over again now. I'm joking. We're not doing that.
You though?
I don't know. So I like the idea. I think it's funny. One, and then like the characters in the world are like, what's going on up there?
Yeah, a little bit of metafiction kind of.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do, and also it kind of cues into like the trope in D&D is like the DM is God.
Oh yeah,
right. The author is God.
Yeah, the word of God.
Yeah, kind of exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. What we want to do though is we're going to actually ask you guys for help, because that's part of the reason why we are a collaborative world building podcast. So I want to ask y'all for origins of races. Can be ones we've talked about or ones that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
Maybe creation of some of their gods or deities. We would be the primordials, more what I'm talking about, but like the actual manifestation of gods. We will do a religion podcast at some point. Yeah. Not podcast, but like an episode at some point.
Yeah, we're just starting
start a whole new podcast about religion. No. We'll do a religion episode at some point, but yeah, just come up with gods, come up with creation for races. And yeah, and the good thing about myths is, say for humans example, they can have 3 or 4 different myths that they have.
Yeah, that is a cool thing.
It's a cool thing. Every race could be like, no, this is what happened. No, this is what happened. So I like that idea. I know in a lot of like fantasy, gods are like a real tangible thing, but I think it's cool if we kind of like mimic that. No one can really agree on what actually happened.
Yeah, I also like. Well, it leaves you more room, right?
Yeah,
because then you can have 3 or 4 different
Creation myths, yeah.
And
Which happens in real world, like, right? There's hundreds of real creation myths.
I always kind of like in writing when I actually don't know what the true thing is.
Yeah.
Like you can write something so that there are 3 or 4 interpretations, and then it's literally just like I might even have my own ideas of what is
Mhm.
true, but then not like forcing it on the on the work and just letting it speak and figure out its own
Yeah.
thing.
So if you guys, yeah, I'll make a post about this week, and we will ask you guys for, for your input. We did want to talk a little bit about our languages. So,
Yeah.
Greg, if you want to take that away.
Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention again our languages. We got 2 now. We got one. It's called Kleitsept. A little bit of a tongue twister, but I kind of wanted it to be a little harder to pronounce, and that's the Dwarven language, just because like that's kind of one of the tropes with the Dwarven language, right?
That no one else knows it,
or that either they don't know it, or if they do, it's really hard to kind of pronounce.
Yeah,
and so that's on. We'll have the links in the description.
But it's on our WorldAnvil.
But yeah, it's on our WorldAnvil, and if you go on the WorldAnvil, there's a definition up in the top right corner, or a dictionary, sorry. And yeah, if you just wanted to figure out a name, like if you wanted like Redbeard, that'd be like, what do I got here? Red is Dilk.
Okay.
And beard is Daunt. So we like Dilk Daunt.
Dilk Daunt. That sounds dirty.
Yeah, that really does. Maybe I should have picked a different thing. So Ilbach is mountain.
Okay.
And so you can just type those things in, and then you'll get the name. And then the other one is the Thrushan is the language of the orcs.
Yeah.
And so a couple of words in there, like Grim is Armal, Blood is Shigzu, Wise is Kraktilg, and Gurkuldu is Massacre. So I don't know why I made all those examples really dark, but
yeah, those are very ominous.
Yeah, except for Wise. That one's a good Kraktilg.
Yeah.
But yeah, so also in the future, I don't know anything about coding, but I want to work on a name generator. So I looked online quickly and found something. So might be able to do that, and then just make a name generator so we could kind of start making our own names. But just like feel inclined, if you feel that way, then do it. But if not, I don't want to stop anybody from
being creative.
Yeah, being creative or sending in submissions.
Yeah, so
of their own.
Yeah, it's just like if you guys want to use it, great. We're working on it. It's really Greg's baby. He's loving it. So yeah, if you guys want to check that out, that'll be on our WorldAnvil. I'll put the links to each individual page in the description. And yeah, I think with that, we're going to jump over to our weekly inspiration.
All right.
So what inspired you this week, Greg?
Well, last episode, I had made it like where I talked about David Bowie there, and and inspiration, and kind of talking about name generators and stuff. But also I just wanted to remember when we were talking about ages, that the first age was only 587 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked into it, and according to like the Tolkien Gateway, I believe, they started counting at the rising of the sun. And so that was also the same time or the same year that the men woke up when the sun rose, and then also the Noldor crossed over the Sea of Ice. Yeah. So that was year one, and then it's 587 years, and it ends with the defeat of Morgoth and the sinking and destruction of most of Beleriand. Yeah. So yeah, it was 587, and so
we were right.
Cool. Yeah, it just seemed real short. But yeah, so my my weekly inspiration, what I was referring to last week when we were talking about name generators and getting the ball going and making you think of something that you might not normally think of, I found that there's a YouTube video you can go look up, and it's just called David Bowie Cut Up Method. Or if you type that in, I'm sure it'll come up. But it's just, I got a quote here from him. What I've used it for more than anything else is igniting anything that might be in my imagination. It can often come up with very interesting attitudes to look into. I tried doing it with diaries and things, and I was finding out amazing things about me and what I'd done and where I was going. And so that cut-up method was actually popularized in the late 1950s and early 1960s by this guy named William S. Burroughs. Okay. He was a writer, chaos magician, and member of the international magical organization illuminate illuminates of Thanateros. So I have no idea what any of that stuff is.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, but apparently, so he was a proponent or a whatever guy that like doing the cut up method, and David Bowie was inspired by him to do it, and then he would just cut up whether it was like books or magazines or like he says in his quote there, diaries, and it was all just a way of getting things that you wouldn't necessarily think about or sparking your imagination, and it just gets the ball rolling because like I find starting any project, whether it's drawing or writing or like an assignment, that the blank page is can be really intimidating. And so just getting in and getting going and using name generators and stuff and anything to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, even like I love name generators and generators in general. I find even if I don't use what it says exactly, there might be like the prefix or the suffix or something. I'm like, ooh, that sounds cool. I'm gonna take that piece,
something kind of.
I'm gonna keep going to see if there's another piece I like.
Yeah.
So, my inspiration this week, I know I was like, oh, what was it? The week seemed to fly by.
Yeah. It did.
But like as I said in the past, I've been in a rut. Whenever I'm in a rut, I kind of jump on either like Skyrim or whatever, just kind of role play and walk around and stuff. So I was playing. I fished on Assassin's Creed for like 2 hours on Tuesday, just pulling up fish.
Yeah, when you were telling me this story, I thought you meant you went fishing for 2 hours. I'm like, oh, it's been so cold though. Like, where'd you go?
Yeah, no. I was like you can fish on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, I found a pond and just like fished for like 2 hours. But one, I kind of really am interested in the fishing line. It's like a rope with like a thing on the end, but I can't get a clear like picture of it, and I couldn't find one online. So I had Emma text her brother who works in video games. I was like, hey, you know people who work at Ubisoft, can you like get me some concept art or something of this thing?
Yeah.
I want to make one. And two, actually, while you're talking, I thought of another thing that kind of inspired me a little bit that I completely forgot about.
Yeah.
So I was watching a TikTok yesterday. I was watching a TikTok, and it was this audio about what's your Bridgerton name?
The hell's Bridgerton?
It's like a show on Netflix. Kind of like Downton Abbey. I've never actually watched it. But anyway, the thing was take your, it's Lord or Lady, take your middle name, the last thing you drink, ton of first part of your street name, Shire, and then that's your Bridgerton name. And then I was like, okay, Lord Anthony Waterton of Snowshire. And I was like, that sounds really cool. I'm going to use that as an NPC, Lord Anthony Waterton of Snowshire.
Okay, so wait, what would mine be? Lord Winston Mint? What's the second part of that?
Minton.
Okay, Lord Winston Minton of Markhamshire?
Yeah.
That's funny.
That sounds really cool.
That sounds really familiar to that one where you like to find out your stripper name.
Yeah, basically. It's very similar.
Like the name of your pet and your street name or something.
But yeah, I thought it and I was like, ooh, that actually sounds really cool. It was like first thing in the morning. I had just woken up. I was waiting for Emma to wake up, and I had a glass of water and I was scrolling through TikTok, and this came up, and I'm like, that sounds really cool actually. So I had a town that I had just made in my world that I'm like, oh, I shouldn't rename that to Snowshire.
That is a really cool name, Snowshire.
Right? Snowshire specifically. I was like, that sounds really cool. It's just like a street name, right?
Yeah. Go back to what you said. Emma's brother there, because what he said to you was pretty funny.
Oh yeah. So he's like, not the strangest thing anyone's ever asked me to do.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm excited to hear back from
him. I really want to get some of that concept art. I couldn't find any of it online. Like every time I type in fishing Assassin's Creed Unity or like the fishing line or whatever, it's just like guides on where to find certain fish or how to do the fishing.
Yeah.
But there's no picture of the actual like fishing line. The only time you ever see it is when you're spinning it over your head to throw it in the water.
Yeah, you're kind of describing
it's moving constantly, right?
So it's got like a hook on the end.
It's like a rope, and there's like some kind of like bobber thing. Looks like, I'm not sure what it looks like because it's always moving, but there's like a big chunk and then a hook. So I'm just curious on how the hook connects to the chunk. It gives it like a bobber a bit further, but it looks like it's really close. I don't know. Anyway, if anyone knows, let me know,
Old hook
because
chuck.
I really want to make one,
That'd be fun.
because I love fishing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was what inspired me this week. I think with that, we are good to wrap up. Unless you have anything else.
No, the next week, well, we did creation myths today, and so next week we're gonna kind of do some apocalypse stuff. So hopefully,
Apocalypse stuff.
yeah, try to make it like not too depressing. That's my goal.
Oh, just apocalypse stuff. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So how was your week? Oh, apocalypse stuff. The usual.
So yeah, let us know what you guys want to submit, and yeah, join us next week for the apocalypse.
Oh, man. I hope I never actually have to say that.
All right. Yeah, if you want to get a hold of us, you can hit us up on Facebook, Building Blank, a collaborative world building podcast. Building Blank podcast on Instagram. Email us, buildingblankpodcast@gmail.com. Discord link will be in the description. And yeah, just say hi.